advocate that he wants to see the California have its own infrastructure, to be better set up, especially as it comes to our water systems. And so I feel Pure Water is in a very good position to continue to advance that. As things get a little complicated on the federal level, we're able to show how Pure Water fits within the needs of all parties involved. That, we get to address the water needs as well as those that the current administration is prioritizing as well. So we're going to continue to work closely on those and ensure that those funding programs exist. One point of order as well that's important to know is that as this all is in the matter as currently, the Congress has a continuing resolution that is up on March 14th. We are expecting them to vote, the House of Representatives to vote on a full year, really till September 30th of this year, so a remainder of the year continuing resolution for FY25. With that does come sequestration, which means a 1% cut across the board of programming, which we will continue to analyze how that's going to impact the JPA, and we'll make sure staff and the board know of those as well. That being said, though, Congress is trying to advance the FY25 so they can continue with FY26 in short order and not end up in a situation where FY26 is in a similar position as we're seeing FY25, i.e. the potential of another full year continuing resolution. Also, in the midst of this, Congress is trying to undertake the negotiations for the reconciliation project. Reconciliation is really a parliamentary procedure in which Congress passes a budget and has a top line number that in which they know how much they can utilize for different tax measures. So in 2017, you may recall that Congress passed during President Trump's first term the Tax Cut and Jobs Act. And a lot of those provisions are sunsetting here coming up in 2026 and 2027. And the president would like to see many of them, if not all, extended. Congress would like to essentially be able to give just a swipe of the pen to allow all of those to move forward, but the current budget number does fall short in order to allow that to do so. So they're going to continue to work and negotiate in those measures and see how and what provisions will get advanced in the reconciliation package as well. So I'm going to pause there because I feel like that was a lot of inside Washington, D.C. right now, and see, Lowry, if you want to add anything here as well.
Just one thing, Anna, which is that although the administration is young and we're still getting, appointments and nominees in place, they have just in the last week made some strong endorsements of investments in the California water system, specifically Sites Reservoir and the San Luis Dam expansion, or San Luis Reservoir expansion, sorry, dam raise. So I think those are good signs, at least for this incoming administration's having some level of commitment to the California water system.
Thanks, Lowry. That's a really great point. And I think we'll pause there and see if there's any questions from the directors.
Any questions from the board?
Yeah, I got one. What was Senator Shelley Moore's position on CERCLA exemptions? Because when we met with her chief of staff, Joe Brown, he was very exercised, you say the word, about PFAS. So I was curious as to see where that would go.
Yeah, that's a great.
It's going.
That's a great question, Director Pullen. So Chairwoman Moore Capito has been a champion for passive receivers and wanting to see the passive receivers exemption get addressed. She understands the risks of CERCLA first, as well as the risks of what CERCLA means, and that without this protection for passive receivers, we're upending what CERCLA's intentions were by Congress in the first place, which was to ensure polluters pay. So the chairwoman, when she was ranking member in the last Congress with then Chair Carper, was putting together some legislation. They did a number of hearings on this, and Joe Brown, her senior policy advisor on this as well, is going to continue to advance this. It's a direction that the chairwoman wants to see really, how can we address it? So something we will definitely be seeing from the chairwoman here in this Congress. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yes, Jay.
Yeah, I just want to thank Anna and Lowry and Chris and Alex and Madeline and who am I leaving out? your whole team in hosting us and doing such a great job. And I learned in Washington, it's not who you know, but who knows you. I know that you guys are really well connected and really well received, and it's really an honor to be able to work with you. And thank you for all your help on the other coast.
Thank you, Director Lewitt.
Any other
We really enjoy the opportunity to work with you all, so thank you very much.
Hi, this is Director Burns. I have a couple of questions. One about Padilla and Murkowski's bill about atmospheric river forecasting. How is
Mhm.
the diminution of NOAA going to affect what they're asking? Because that affects us pretty directly with this atmospheric river information.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a piece of legislation that Senator Padilla has been championing and really wants to see put through. I'd say that the focuses on NOAA. The president does want to understand natural disasters and make sure people can be prepared for them, something that he worked on in his first term as well. Each administration addresses it a little differently. I would say that the way that the president is evaluating the entirety of the federal government right now doesn't put a bar on this possibility to occur, right? Congress still needs to pass it and make it something anyways. But I think that, it could be something when shared with the priorities that the president definitely could understand. Again, though, before anything can happen, Congress does need to take up the legislation and pass it and present it to the president to sign into law.
Okay, next question is about the skinny reconciliation. It seemed to be that this was, I was very interesting about Votorama. Can you explain? I mean, a lot of these meetings occur, and I don't think that those of us who sit here and aren't in Washington understand a lot of what's going on over there, or even in our own state legislature. So when I read that, I said, okay, that sounds like something that would have been on Wonderama back in the 60s.
Yeah, so I would
Senator.
almost do this one a little more closer to the Twilight Zone, Director Burns, where once it starts, it's really hard for it to stop, is really what Votorama falls under. This is in the Senate solely. So in the Senate, the procedure for Votorama essentially allows um, any number that there's no limit on how many amendments can be put forward. So basically, until they tire themselves out or somebody doesn't have any more amendments, they're going to keep they present an amendment, it gets voted on. They present an amendment, it gets voted on. And so that's what that votorama. It went into the wee hours of the morning and gave them all an opportunity to have their amendments heard. Unlike traditional parliamentary procedure in the Senate, there was no way for an amendment to be stopped, but for the vote to fail for it. That's again, this is just a specific parliamentary procedure when it comes up to reconciliation. It is not one that is, taken up on nominations or appropriations for that matter as well. Lowry?
Yeah, can I just add that it's sort of a kabuki game because the budget reconciliation results in a framework under which, actual laws get changed, but the budget resolution itself does not become law. And so these amendments don't have any real legal effect. They don't become law. And so it's really an opportunity for the opposing party to make the party on reconciliation take some tough votes on that are largely are almost entirely symbolic. And so it's a little bit of just a drama, as Anna said, until they tire themselves out.
Okay, thank you. I thought it was very interesting. Last question. President Trump issues California wildfire-focused executive order. This hits a lot closer to home, although the atmospheric rivers do too. I'm curious how Washington is viewing what's happened, not just the president, but because we know he's been here, but how is Washington really viewing what's going on here? And certainly you may be aware of our ash issues and our landfill issues, but how is this going to actually affect us?
So the executive order that the president put forward, as you mentioned, it was directed after he was in California for the wildfire review. And it essentially is trying to get all the federal agencies involved to look at what are the measures that can be taken to prevent wildfires. What's needed here, really trying to look at that holistic look. It also is looking at having additional capacities where impossible on the CVP and the State Water Project as well, and ensuring those pieces are not inhibited by other actions, if you would. Um, I would say that, and curious, as well from the directors that were in DC last week, wildfire was something we talked about. And it's something that I would say each member of their own right was very concerned about. And there were different reasons. If it's, how is the water coming in? Why or where are interconnections? And because they really applauded Las Virgenes, you all having experienced this fire directly as well, that you did not run out of water and that, your EOC was up and running. And they applauded the fact that you were able to work with the districts around you to help them too. But I would say a lot of the questions were like, why was that needed in the first place? And trying to help them understand it. And also trying to help them understand where there's some fault lines in the federal support systems, when it comes to, for instance, the ability to get stationary generators versus portable generators. And them understanding, up in the mountains, the portable is going to be really what we need. The stationary isn't always going to be the best. Stationary is good in certain circumstances, but sometimes the portable. And so having those discussions was really valuable and something that they understood once we described it to them, but it's not something on the forefront of their minds until we bring it to them.
All right, last question about the Colorado River Pact. I see it says here that the 7 senators are all in agreement, but from your perspective, what is Washington thinking of doing? Are they going to enforce some sort of change or agreement on California and all of the states? Or do you think that states are going to come up with their own decision?
Yeah, so that's a great question. The 7 senators don't have their own proposal right now, or the 7 states, the senators from the 7 states do not have their own proposal right now. But they did come together and say, basin state negotiators, we want you to show up. We want everybody at the table. There's been times where the upper basin, really isn't at the table right now. There's been times in past negotiations where the lower basin isn't at the table. This one, they really were getting to a time frame where they have to come up with this because it's post 2026 guidelines. We are coming down to the wire. And so the president will be putting forward his new reclamation commissioner, and I'd expect that reclamation commissioner to possibly, but I could see them potentially playing a stronger role in the negotiations of the Colorado than previous. Commissioner Tootin was incredible in the way that she worked to empower others to bring to her the solution. And really her whole team was like trying to drive everybody and get everybody to show what they needed at the table. I think potentially the new commissioner will, at the direction of the administration, kind of say to everybody, it's time to show up or we're going to tell you how you're showing up. It becomes difficult for the administration to do that and you don't want to put them in a position to. And I believe we won't end up there, but it's going to be tenuous and continue to be a little tough for a little while here.
All right, thank you very much.
I see no other comments or questions. I just want to thank you guys as well. You great hosts, fantastic meetings, and it just really learned a lot, and I really appreciate it. And it was also really fun to spend Anna's birthday with her.
Thank you, Director Kordesky.
Thank you so much, guys. All right, moving on. I see Cyrus Devers. Can you provide us the state legislative update?
I would love to, and if I could take just a moment to build on something Director Lewitt said, it is about who you know. So if I could do a quick introduction, I don't know if the format shows she's visible on your screen, but there's Laura Bennett has joined me tonight as a panelist. There she is. So I think I reported last time that almost over half the legislature has been there for 2 years or less with this big turnover we've had. And so just logistically, as a one-person show, I can't keep up that network that you guys kind of need me to have. So Laura Bennett's kind of become my informal partner, and she's helping out behind the scenes. She has big name clients like Amazon and Uber, so she's a big wheel. So she is lending her political clout, to my efforts for you in Sacramento. So I just wanted her to be on screen because you actually might see her if you come to Sacramento. She might be helping out meetings and stuff like that. So that's Laura Bennett. Moving on to a quick report, really short, because we are still in that blackout period, mostly blackout period, where the bills after they're introduced can't be heard or amended for 30 days. The bill introduction deadline was back on February 21st. Half the bills got introduced in the last week, so we have a really big block of bills that cannot be acted on, until like the last week of March. We are starting to see some bills get set in the third week of March, that, didn't wait till the last minute. But by and large, Sacramento on the surface appears really quiet right now. What's happening is a lot of work behind the scenes as people are getting their bills ready, getting their background sheets ready, getting their supporters lined up, getting letters ready. So there's a lot of activity happening behind closed doors. But if you're actually in Sacramento right now, it's kind of quiet. Budget wise, there's always stuff happening on the budget. No new news, but I can tell you there's grumblings in the street as we talk about this Prop 4 wildfire money. We're starting to hear Northern California legislators kind of grumble about, hey, Prop 4 was a statewide bond, right? So it's going to be benefiting the entire state. All this money is not just going to go to Southern California because of these wildfires, right? So just a little bit of members putting in their marker. So far, it's just like comments made in subcommittee and things like that. Just Northern California members saying, hey, gang, we're here too, and this was a statewide bond. You don't get all the Prop 4 money. So we have talking to do going forward, because Newsom, of course, Governor Newsom is very much of a mind to send that money south for the needs really as quickly as possible. Moving on, I heard Sites Reservoir mentioned. This was a really good 2-week run for Sites Reservoir. Not only the federal money got released, I think it was $200 million, but also the Water Commission disclosed that they have over $500 million left in their budget, largely as a result of the implosion of Los Vaqueros. So there's really only about 2 projects left standing, and Sites is the only large one. So I think Sites, in addition to really recently getting this money, I think they stand to be the main beneficiary of this remaining $500 million that the Water Commission has been managing. So I think things are looking really good for Sites. Last point, I think if you guys are watching the news, State Water Project allocation bumped up from 20% to 35%. The water outlook continues to look good, but not great. Snowpack is actually not at historic average. Most of the reservoirs look good, but we expect that to go up. So far, things are still looking good for the water year. But as you know, DWR, they're keeping their cards close to their vest. Waiting to see, being conservative, which is their job, but still things are going in the right direction. Mentioned Prop 4, we are going to have some informational hearings, some budget sub-hearings on just how this money is going to be expended. So by the time we get to this meeting next month, we're going to have a lot more to say about that, but things are just getting rolling right now. With that, we also have events. Some of you are going to be joining us up here in Sacramento for Aqua events too here in the next 30 days. So with that, that's all that's going on right now. Let me pause and see if you have any questions for me.
Any questions for Cyrus? Len?
Cyrus, the bill, AB 259, is the teleconference bill. How is that going to affect if a director has to be what happens? How's it going to work? What impacts are going to have on our ability to zoom in to the meetings?
Yeah, I think it's just let's continue under the current rules that we've set up. Remember, these things had sunsets in there. We're going to try them out. They're working. They seem to be well received, and so let's continue on and keep making this an option for people. So in terms of impact, I think it's more about avoiding impacts to what you're used to.
Thank you. The next issue is Senate Bill 350, where water rate assistance program. Is that a water tax? How is that going to be funded?
Well, yeah, it'd be great if you could answer that question. That's the problem. We don't know the funding. So this has come up many times before, and we're neutral until you disclose what the funding source is going to be, and then things tend to blow up. The last time, you remember, the LIRA, low income rate assistance, LIRA, is going to be funded by a voluntary, of course, my quotes, air quotes, voluntary contributions, which was logistically a nightmare. And this has happened before. Remember, this goes all the way back to what was that 2018, the mining bill, where they wanted to do a water tax to fund this. So I don't think there's any appetite for a new tax But the answer to your question is the funding source this time has yet to be identified. We will keep watching and keep you informed.
Thank you. That's my questions.
Gary.
Go back to the same question. Hi, Cyrus. About the president's decision to force California to release more water. And I know I read somewhere, and I think in one of your comments about San Luis getting more water, taking more water. But I understand right now it's under repair or it's under expansion, if I understand that correctly. So I wanted to know what anyone is doing about where this excess water would go. As I read at the end of your report, that we had 5.1 million acre feet that couldn't go anywhere. And I thought maybe you'd give us a little background on that PPIC report that I don't know how many of us actually read. I went and I looked at it. It's interesting.
Yeah, so couple of things are intertwined there. There's what the president ordered, the water releases that were ordered. Those were down in Southern California, in an area of the state which has no connection to Los Angeles. And then separate from that, there is the desire to capture more of these high flows on the Sacramento River. And my comment there in the PPIC report showed it's like, yes, even with all best efforts, we're still failing to capture a lot of water that is available to capture. Right now, you have Governor Newsom acting through emergency orders, really trying to divert as much as we can to where there are groundwater recharge basins. But if you know the engineering of groundwater recharge basins, they act kind of slowly. So there's a limited amount that we can do there. So the thrust of that is saying it's like sometimes surface storage is the only thing that can really act quickly enough to catch us, and we have very little south of the delta. Now, if you heard some of my past presentations, I'm of the personal opinion that Sites Reservoir will be the last major surface reservoir built in California. We'll see if history proves to be right or not, but regardless of what strategy is employed, the thrust of the article, and it lays out why really clearly, is that we need to do a lot to capture high flows, because everything about climate change says this is the new normal. Whipsawed between periods of dry and then huge pulses of water coming down the Sacramento River. And what are we going to do about that? Of course, the Delta Conveyance, remember, is also a big part of that. We haven't talked about that in a while, but being able to take flows off the Sacramento River at any time we need them without having to worry about endangered species or other issues like that is also critical to moving water to where it can be put to use. That kind of rambled because they're kind of two intertwined subjects. Did I answer your question, or is there more I could say?
No, I think so. I just have one more that adds on to that. With the governor taking the CEQA out of at least certain situations, and I'm not sure, that's where my question is, with him taking CEQA away from the most situations right now, and again, most is what I'm not sure of, does that mean that other areas of California could go forward with some of their projects and not worry about environmental changes?
Are you referring to the suspension of CEQA in the emergency areas, I believe?
And that's what I was asking.
Yeah.
I read it that way. It is only in the emergency areas.
Yes, that's the only authority the governor has. When he uses emergency powers, California governors have quite broad emergency powers, but they're not unlimited. So the governor is not privileged to cancel CEQA outside of a declared emergency. So, however, there are two things relevant here. One, of course, there's the fires. There's the rebuilding, and he said it. He basically took the Coastal Commission out of the equation, because CEQA is actually something in these kinds of wildfire emergency situations. CEQA is kind of automatically suspended, for purposes of that. However, the governor can also declare a flood emergency. So if there's, and it's a little bit of tongue in cheek because we really don't have floods on the Sacramento River anymore. But nonetheless, where the governor says, hey, this is a flood emergency, we've got 20, atmospheric rivers lined up out of the Pacific Ocean. Under my authority, I am suspending CEQA, other things, and so that we can mitigate this flood risk by diverting waters into hopefully groundwater recharge basins or other places where we can store it. But yes, the governor's ability to do that is limited by his emergency powers.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions or comments for Cyrus? Seeing none. Cyrus, thank you so much. I appreciate your report.
It's always a pleasure. I'll see you soon.
All right, moving on. So 5B, the Pure Water Project Las Virgenes Triunfo update. Mr. Oliver Schlosser.
Good evening, directors. Good to be with you tonight in person. I'm going to share the February update for the Pure Water Project. We have had a very busy, a very busy month. Received the 30% design for the advanced water purification facility from the Progressive Design Builder from Walsh. We've been reviewing that. Actually, the review period just closed today. We're also reviewing the reverse osmosis concentrate pipeline sections of that. They'll be submitting the 30% design in different sections just to aid in our ability to have time to review everything and to keep things staggered. And we also took a look at some of the direct costs that they've developed with 30%. At the end of this month, they'll have a full new picture of the project cost estimate. So at the moment, we're just looking at direct costs. Jacobs has also given us a draft of the Title 22 engineering report for the advanced water purification facility. We already have a Title 22 engineering report for Tapia. There's going to be a separate one required for the advanced water purification facility since it's its own, considered its own discharge point. So in order to keep that review process quick, we are breaking that up into different sections. There's certain parts of that report that will come from the reservoir modeling, but Jacobs has put together what we have thus far so that hopefully the Division of Drinking Water can do review again, kind of staggered and keep schedule. Speaking of the dye tracer study, that was initiated this month for Las Virgenes Reservoir. So the dye tracer was released and has been being tracked over the last couple of weeks. Everything was successful with that. And actually, I do have some slides with me today to kind of go over that 3D model as well as the dye tracer. I thought some pretty cool images that go along with those. Thought you might enjoy seeing those. So if you give me just a moment. There we go. There is a video here. I haven't test drove it, but hopefully it'll work with the slide deck. But so the Walsh team, along with the 30% model, provided some renderings that came from that model effort as well. So this is kind of a bird's eye view from the western front portion of the building, because a little bit more of a flavor of the building in relation to the areas around it and some of that oak tree mitigation that will happen along with the building. This is a closer look at the front. And again, a lot of this is possible because of that three-dimensional model, the amount of detail that the Progressive Design Builder puts into it. This is from the back of the building. So you can see the rectangle here is the chemical storage building. Behind, there's some equipment that is able to be under a canopy and outside, and then the main portion of the building there. And then this is a closer look at that chemical storage facility on the back of the building as well. As you can see, a smaller height or similar height to the building, so not visible from the street itself, but shielded by the main building. With that, this is a screenshot from the 3D model itself. So this is a tool that the Progressive Design Builder has given us, the owner, and Jacobs, our owner advisor, to be able to literally walk through the facility. The dots that you see on your screen are places where our staff or Jacobs have provided a comment on the overall design of the facility. So as you're going through and doing your own review, you can kind of see what's already been commented on. It helps to streamline everything and make sure they don't get 10 of the same comments. But actually, they did receive, I believe, somewhere in the neighborhood of 400 comments from our review and Jacobs' review for the advanced water purification facility. So we'll be looking at that this month. And then this is the video. Hopefully this will work, but this is a quick fly through, again, supported by the model, but gives you kind of a taste of how much detail we're able to get into with the building itself and the ability to look at things from every angle, make sure that we have space for different equipment. Obviously, the building will have a roof, but showing it without it gives you that look into the buildings. This is lab areas, administrative areas, the entry, and then as you get into the main part of the building, that's where the process areas will be, the microfiltration, reverse osmosis, UV, ultraviolet oxidation processes. You can see that chemical building in the back. Hopefully this isn't making anybody too sick. But, and as we're going through and reviewing the 3D model, we have the ability to really look at exactly what we want to look at, not just I want to see the process area, but we can see the piping in the foundation of the building. We can see the height to the roof above it. All these things are able to be measured within the model, and it's just a really powerful tool, especially at this stage in design, to capture comments that a lot of times don't get picked up in a design until later on when there's a much higher cost implication. So I think that's the end of that. But really pleased with what Walsh produced here. It's been very helpful for our review. And as I mentioned, we'll be spending the next several weeks going over those 400 comments. Walsh will take a first look at incorporating those, and then any ones that need further discussion, we will go over. With that, maybe I'll pause for a second before talking about the dye tracer testing and see if there's any questions about the 3D model or what we've been working on.
Any questions, comments? My comment is it looks beautiful. Yeah, I appreciate that.
Thank you.
I have a question. So in the skid area, those are big doors, so you can bring material in and out? Is that I have this elevation you guys just gave me this afternoon.
Yep, that's one of the key things that we're looking at with operators is the ability to get equipment in and out of the building, to be able to maneuver it within the building. When we're taking out a pump or a reverse osmosis module, making sure that we have the crane or the forklift or whatever equipment is needed to grab that it can turn and move as it needs, and then also if it needs to be removed from the building, that there's thought being given as to how that's done.
So you're looking at what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 big doors?
The main, let's go back to here. So 5 main access points within the building itself. Yes.
That's down here on the left.
Yep.
Not real well seen. Okay, I was trying to understand the plans and that structure right next to the front of the building, in the front, I guess on the west end here that sticks out, which the board had commented on a month or 2 months ago, that wanted some more development, and they put some eyeshadow on the glass.
Right.
Is it possible, I guess this is a comment to the board too, is it possible that we could have some sort of artwork on this facility, on this building someplace, some sculptural stuff on the wall? So it would less than 0.25% of the budget. I'd like to propose that the board consider having some artwork especially on this part of the building. I don't know quite what. I've been thinking about a mural, but I'm not so sure. Something simple, and perhaps using the community to work with us, so we get we get more community involvement and people know what it is. Because this is our project for the future.
Absolutely. So I know that in art element is something that's been discussed throughout the project. It's something that we have always intended to look at once we get to a full design, because it doesn't really have impacts on other parts of the design. One of the directions, and I agree with you, there's obviously some available space on this portion of the building. We do have some signage, some pure water branding when we enter the building, but that's facing the west end. We've also instructed landscape architects to preserve some space in this kind of corner area here, if you see my cursor, where
No, I can't. Where's your cursor? I see, I got it now. Okay, in the front corner, right.
Yeah, so there is, there's going to be outdoor seating places for operators to have meals, but then we've also instructed them to reserve some space as kind of undefined. If we wanted to add a water feature, a waterless water feature, or some sort of public art space there that wasn't actually on the building. So I think all ideas are still open at the moment, and it is something that we intend to look at as we progress the project.
Thank you.
With that, I did want to quickly just talk about the dye tracer test for the reservoir. So as I've mentioned in previous, went too far. So as I mentioned in previous presentations, we are conducting a dye tracer testing for the reservoir. This allows us to, in real time, see what happens when a tracer, which is meant to represent the pure water product water being released into the reservoir, what happens when it does enter the reservoir. So this is a picture from a couple weeks ago, the actual release of that rhodamine dye, food safe dye and meeting all water quality requirements. But so that dye is released, and then the consultant uses underwater drones and grab samples from the boat in order to characterize how that dye is moving within the reservoir. So it was a successful release of the dye. We were able to get a good idea of how it's moving. I think the conditions in the reservoir were a little bit different than we expected. It's gotten a little warmer earlier, but it didn't have an effect on the overall release of the tracer. At the end of the day, we take the data from this and it feeds into the hydrodynamic reservoir model in order to calibrate that so that we can then take the model, come up with lots of different scenarios and have confidence in the results that we're getting. So I just wanted to update you on that. It was a pretty interesting thing. You don't see a lot of open water dye tracer tests, and so far a big success.
And I'm assuming these are 3D, it's a 3D model that you are able to build from this?
It is. So the drone takes readings at different depths, and so we're able to see not just over the length and width of the reservoir, but at depth as well. And that's one of the things that I was mentioning about it being a little bit warmer. You start to see a thermocline once things warm up, and you have colder water on the bottom, warm water on top. So it was interesting to see how that dye behaved when we do have that thermocline.
So is the drone, how does it track the dye? Visually or electronically?
Well, they have a drone up in the air that gets visual pictures
Right.
of it as well, but then they have an underwater drone, so basically like an RC submarine. And those take different samples at different depths, and then they're able to, I think through GPS, say exactly where they are within the reservoir, and that gives them the ability to give a concentration profile at different depths all along the length of the reservoir.
Cool.
Wonderful. Well, with that, I can stop sharing here. We're going to have a very busy month this month. We're going to, as I said, continue to look at direct costs. We'll have the 30% design packages for some of the other reaches of the reverse osmosis concentrate pipeline coming in. We're still working with the Walsh team for adding in the final piece of pipeline scope into their contract, which is the piece of pipeline that goes from the base of the reservoir to the reservoir itself. So we're going through the process of talking to them with that. We have more geotechnical investigation to do along the alignment of the reverse osmosis concentrate pipeline. We'll be finalizing the Title 22 report. So yeah, the next couple of months are going to be pretty busy as we push towards 60% design, which we're shooting for June.
That's
With that,
fantastic.
thank you.
Any other comments or questions?
I'm not sure if you covered it in your report, but what's anything new or what's happening with, I'm worried about the brine line going out to the ocean. Is that a worry of yours, or is that something we shouldn't worry about yet, or is that a done deal, or what's?
You mean as far as the part owned by Callegas?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we had meetings with Callegas this month. They are still on schedule. They have a much shorter amount of pipeline to build, and they're working with consultants and possibly even contractors that have done other portions of that pipeline. So we haven't heard of any concerns of them not being ready for our schedule. I think we'll probably be the critical path. But we did have a meeting between our designers and their designers this week to talk about what sort of pressure we need to be providing as it exits our pipeline, enters their pipeline, those kind of details.
One last question, Oliver. Going back to the video, it showed the building signage facing west. So I don't think it's going to be visible at all, or almost, especially when you consider the building is 15, 18 feet at the bottom above the ground outside. So I think there's got to be a rethink of where that signage goes, Because I don't think it'll work at all.
There will likely also be some sort of monument or signage at the entryway to the facility itself at street level where the driveway exits off of Agoura Road.
Much better.
Yeah, so that signage that I mentioned on the door is really, as you enter the building, it's more of an entryway signage.
Okay.
And I apologize, one thing I forgot to mention, I want to be responsive to the comment received last week about percent complete for the Progressive Design Build contract. We are working on a Pure Water project dashboard that's going to have information such as how far we are complete with each of the contracts, how much has been spent, how much is remaining, what our funding is, working on that under the leadership of Joe. And so I believe we'll have something to share with you on our next update.
So last comment, what happened to the huge oak tree right down near Agoura Road? I didn't see it in that rendering.
I'm not sure. The larger oak tree that's near the front of the property by our ingress egress, that may, I don't believe it's a heritage, but I do believe that may be one of the ones that needs to be mitigated for. So we're in conversations right now with Agoura. In fact, this month, we connected our oak tree experts with their oak tree experts to go into more details of the plan. We feel like there's benefit to maybe some smaller mitigation trees that would open up areas that would otherwise not be available to plant trees. So we're having back and forth with the city to figure out exactly how many trees to do, what the timing would be. You know, we'd like to see, if we're able to utilize the city's parcel, we'd like to see some mitigation happen near the beginning of construction, but any mitigation on our property will have to wait till the end because we'll be using that space for construction lay down and other construction activities.
Fantastic. Any other questions or comments? Oliver, a robust and easy to understand presentation. Thank you. All right. Moving on, item 6, action items. Let's see, item 6A, Rancho Las Virgenes Composting Facility Bulk Wood Chip Amendment Contract Award. And Veronica Hurtado is our guest for this one.
Good evening, directors. So the Rancho compost process utilizes wood chip amendment to bulk up the processed biosolids. This year, the contract with the existing supplier ended, so we had to solicit new bids. On February 12th, the bidding process was completed, and we had posted a request for proposals on the district website. I reached out to reputable suppliers for this wood chip amendment, and we received 3 bids. The lowest responsive bid was submitted by North Hills Recycling. North Hills Recycling provided a sample to the Rancho operators. It meets the specifications. They also had the lowest initial pricing as well as the best value cumulatively over a 5-year period for the renewals. So the recommendation before the board is to authorize the administering agent general manager to execute a 1-year contractual services agreement with North Hills Recycling in the amount of $256,425 with 4 1-year renewal options using a 5% escalator for the purchase of bulk wood chip amendment.
Fantastic. Do we have a motion?
I'll move it.
Second? Second, fantastic. Any discussions or questions for Veronica?
I just have one question, and I noticed it in some of our other proposals this week. Why is 5% considered a reasonable escalator? If inflation goes down 2-3 years from now, it might only be 2 or 3%. Is this what all the standard companies are doing? And again, I noticed it in a lot of the other proposals.
Actually, in these bid documents that I released, the contractor had the option of putting in their bid escalator as well as using CPI, so the Consumer Price Index, as their escalator. One of them had a 0% escalation for the 5 years. Recycled wood products actually indicated a Consumer Price Index, but I just put in the 5% escalator to simplify the math in the chart. North Hills Recycling actually indicated a 5% increase. And it seems to be standard for contracts and annual increases.
Okay, I guess if you feel it's better, okay. And I want to wish you congratulations for being honored as International Woman of the Year.
Oh, thank you very much.
Ah,
I have a question. So Veronica, these are big numbers. And I was wondering like what kind of due diligence we've done on North Hills Recycling and
We've actually hired them before. They did the biofilter replacement project, which was completed in September of last year. They were successful with that project, provided us with the wood chips that we need for those specifications. They're larger chunks for biofiltration and had no issues with that contract.
thanks.
Following up on his question, what is the source of their material? And what's the guarantee that they're going to have it in 5 years?
I suppose there's no guarantee that they'll have it in 5 years, but the source is ground down pallets, shipping pallets.
Okay.
So we asked specifically for a very dry product, and it has to be lead-free, paint-free. We test our compost for heavy metals, so that's why we can't have it added to our amendment.
How often do we test it?
Every 2 months.
That's good.
Gary, did you have a question?
I was just wondering if we have some sort of magnetic process, because there are a lot of nails in pallets. And I wonder if there's a way that we sort them out, but I don't remember.
No, we also indicate that they have to be free of nails.
Nails.
So they should be delivering it to us without nails.
Have we ever found any?
I'm sure they sneak through.
Okay. All right, any further questions or comments? Seeing none, we can vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Any abstentions? Seeing none, unanimously. Thank you, Veronica. Moving on to item 6B, Pure Water Project Las Virgenes Triunfo On-Call Construction and General Outreach Services Authorization. I believe Mike McNutt will be presenting this.
Good evening, distinguished board. I'm here today to talk about a little project called the Pure Water Project Las Virgenes Triunfo, in case you haven't heard of it. We are entering into a very critical phase, and especially in the next couple of years, where there's going to be construction activity quite significantly going through multiple different communities, and it's going to be potentially disrupting both residential homes, but also potentially businesses as well. Especially because we have gone down and figured out where the pipeline construction is going to occur. There is going to be definitely some businesses that are going to be impacted by this. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to ensure that we have a robust outreach campaign for the next 4 years and kind of front load it for the next couple of years, because that's when the majority of activity is going to occur. There's a couple of things that's going to happen with this. One is that it's an opportunity to impress upon what this project is to a larger community, but it's also to ensure that those people impacted are going to have as minimal impact as possible. And so we come up with some options for that. What we did was we put together an RFP, we sent it out, and we got 5 bids for it. And we had a group of people internally, the public affairs team in Oliver, go through the proposals, rank them, and come to a decision on what we would like to come and recommend to you tonight. The 5 proposals we got are one from Katz and Associates, one from a company called Elevate, or a consulting firm called Elevate, one from WSC, one from Ariano and Associates, or AA, and also from CV Strategies. So after a lot of consideration and going through these proposals with a fine-tooth comb, we had decided that Ariano and Associates was something we wanted to put forth and recommend to you all. So let me tell you just a little bit about what this is. AA has successfully provided construction outreach activities and notifications and event planning services for significant water-related efforts, such as the Inland Empire Utilities Agency's Recycled Water Program expansion, the Metropolitan Water District Orange County Feeder Realigning Project, the Cayugas Municipal Water District Interconnection Project, oddly enough, with Las Virgenes Municipal Water District. And they also have experience working on a contentious infrastructure projects, including the San Bernardino County Transportation Authority's I-10 corridor express lanes. So they definitely have a lot of background when it comes to construction activity. Now, one of the things that I really liked about them, they've taken sort of like our mantra of safety, trust, transparency, and leadership being sort of the focal point of their outreach campaign that they would like to assist us with. So there's some specific projects and events and deliverables that we're going to do. One of them is going to be a coffee and hot chocolate event to further entrench this into the community. We like to do this, of course, in Oak Park in the Triunfo service area. They've designated and figured out a couple of locations and actual coffee places that are in Oak Park to do that with. Beer events, annual beer events would be something else that we would do. There's also something that they have come up with within the scope of services called the Pure Water Business Support Program. Now, I think this is really cool. And an example would be the Orange County Transportation, and this is what they've done. The Orange County Transportation Commission's Orange County Streetcar Eat, Shop, and Play program. Now, this is something that we had thought, and we put it into our proposal, into our RFP when we sent it out. What we would like to do is figure out a campaign to help the businesses that are going to be impacted by either foot traffic because of, or a reduction in foot traffic, or just people coming in to their, to their place of businesses. So what we would do is to help, we would develop advertising and promotional strategies for each business or a group of businesses where they can utilize, whether it's on social media, digital media campaigns, potentially promotional customer opportunities, temporary signage to enhance the visibility during construction, and potentially also explore free advertising opportunities throughout the region. Some of the other things that we will be doing is creating a construction brochure, setting up a hotline during construction, going and doing door knocking to residences and to businesses, also communications and stakeholder logs, and of course doing social media graphics and videos. One of the things that we really, really liked about them is that they are hungry and they're looking to hit a home run on this project with us. And so with that, staff would recommend to authorize the administrating agent and general manager to execute a 4-year professional services agreement with Ariano Associates Incorporated in the amount of $750,000 for on-call construction and general outreach services in support of the Pure Water Project, Las Virgenes Triunfo.
Thank you. Thank you for the energetic report.
What's that?
Are there any, can we get a motion and a second, please?
I'll make a motion.
Fantastic. Are there any questions or discussions for Mike?
I have just one question. Let's say it's a 4-year deal, say you're a year into it, you don't like the way it's going, is there an out is there an ability to get out after a certain amount of time?
I don't know if we actually have something in there about getting out, but I mean, like, this is something that we will work hands-on with them. This isn't just like, hey, you're going to do this stuff. I mean, we're, as our internal team, will be directly working with them to ensure that the product is what we want and what is going to be best for the community. So, I mean, I think that that's probably the best way that we would do that, unless you say something different.
Keith and I were just talking about, there normally is a cancellation or termination clause in our professional services agreements. It's very rare that we would execute that, but there normally is a term for that.
Fantastic. Jay?
So there's a lot, it's not just the beer and wine tasting, the pure water acceptance, it's also the pipeline. It's all the above. Who decides of the $750,000 in the 4 years, where to put the attention, how much do is us doing that? Are you doing that, or our team doing that?
Yes.
And then they implement it?
Yes.
You'll be guiding them the whole time?
Yes.
Working.
Absolutely.
It's
Yes.
with our input.
Yeah, of course. I mean, regular updates to the board is going to be absolutely something, and getting input from you, and then we could make those suggestions, and then we can implement those. For sure. I mean, this is supposed to be like everybody's got a say in this, right? And so like, this is all of our projects, and we all want to make sure everybody feels like they're contributing. And I know that they would be very open to that and implement what we ask them to.
Yeah, because I know in my short 11 years here, I don't think we've ever done a pipeline. And certainly nothing like this in the
Right.
community where they could cause traffic. I mean, I don't count the Lindero one because that was Callegas, but,
Yeah.
but,
It wasn't only Cayugas.
well, they were in charge of it.
Yes.
So,
I got talked a lot by folks.
So I think it's really important to stay ahead of the information and to know what's going on and to give whatever input that we might be able to impact, especially information that came from ratepayers like Director Pullen has suggested he received in the past.
For sure.
And so in essence, is this basically just increasing, not just, but I mean, is bolstering your team for the next 4 or 5 years where we really need it?
I think this, yes, and yes, but also to make sure that we are doing everything we can to make this go as smoothly as possible. So there's not a lot of pushback from the community. And it's also about educating and informing so many people about why this project's important and what it means to our community and how it potentially could else impact, some of our neighboring communities like Thousand Oaks as an example. So I think that this is more than just simply, hey, there's this pure water project. It also really is going to reflect on our brands between our two agencies and the JPA as well. So the better we do this job, the better people are going to have a connotation of what this project is and just how we do business and conduct ourselves. So it's a lot of things.
Right on. Any further questions?
I asked management to provide me with all of the quotations, and I read through them all. And I must admit that, and I know some of the work that CATS has done before, and they're very professional, and they've represented a lot of pure water plants. But their bid was 200,000 plus over, which you may not see in any of this quotation here. It was 968 or something like that. And I think that you're doing, and you've expressed before, Michael, how there's a limitation to how much work you and your staff can do. And these young people sound like they're excited the way I've said we should be excited, and really helping those businesses that were along the Brine line that are going to be impacted, and doing all these different things so that homeowners really do understand it from both of our companies or districts' perspectives, are really, really advantageous. And after speaking with you, I'm convinced that they seem to be the young and energetic group to move forward, especially with social media that everybody's paying attention to.
Yes.
That's great to hear.
Yes. And I think that, just as an aside, like, I've been involved with the Calabasas Chamber of Commerce for years now, and I really, really have an affinity to understanding the need for assisting small businesses more now than ever. So that's going to be a main motivation for me, is to make sure that we're doing everything we can to help all of these businesses that will be impacted or inconvenienced, I guess, by us putting in a pipeline.
Absolutely. Fantastic. Any more questions or comments?
Well, I would just add to that, we should get them all behind us. They should all be supporters of this pure water plant by what we're doing to get that to be helpful to them.
Yeah, I think that's all part of this whole thing, is that everybody, all those businesses, if they can be ambassadors for this, just learn about it. I mean, that's huge.
Thank you so much. And with that, let's call the vote.
No, hold on a second. Given that we're going to be tearing up the streets, a lot of streets, and especially in my community, going down Lindero, which is a major thoroughfare, and going across the bridge, I'm kind of curious about that one. I really want to see a very strong effort in education and signs. This is about our future, because this is, as I mentioned to Director Lewitt, hey, I got a lot of feedback even on that small pipeline going up Lindero. So I just wanted to make sure that you understand this is critical for all of us, and especially to me.
I understand that, Director Pullen, and I appreciate that. We'll make sure that we do all those things and signage is going to be a big deal for sure.
Yeah, just to, we're not putting in a pipeline to make money. We're putting in a pipeline, because the EPA is mandating that we do it. And we're also doing this so we have a water supply. And I think if they know that this is going to be 30% of our water supply, it might not be their water supply, but we all share the same bucket of water. We're putting more water into the system that we can all share. And I think if they think of that in that perspective, and they tell their customers, the small business owners tell their customers that, hey, sorry for the inconvenience on the road, but we're adding water to this area that doesn't have any water. I think less people will complain at that.
I couldn't agree more.
Fantastic. Any more comments or questions? All right, let's call the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Any abstentions? Hearing none, it passes. Thank you. And item 6C, Tapia Water Reclamation Facility 003 Outfall Pipeline Rehabilitation Project, adoption of initial study / mitigated negative declaration. That was a mouthful. Hi, Veronica. Good to see you back again.
Mouthful. I'm back. This one's not as straightforward. So yes, as Director Horodecki mentioned, it's the Tapia, we like to refer to it as 003 Outfall Pipeline Rehabilitation. I figured since we have several new directors, since the last time this item came before the board, it'd be a good time for a refresher course on the ongoings and the background of the project. Just to get started with the background, we started this project back in 2019, overlapping 2020. Just by knowing the age of the pipeline, it was built in 1979. So we wanted to get some CCTV of the pipeline and see its condition. We actually couldn't inspect the entire pipeline because it was too deteriorated to get the rover through more than, I believe it was about 800 feet. So just to recap, constructed in 1979, it was constructed to convey water to Malibu Creek from the Tapia Water Reclamation Facility. So it conveys Tapia effluent recycled water once it's gone through the treatment process. It also conveys Tapia groundwater. The groundwater is being pumped from below the balancing pond, the big pond structures at the facility, and that is necessary to balance the groundwater and the above ground structures and protect the structural integrity of those. We also utilize it for storm flows. So in my 17, almost 18 years with the district, we hadn't had to use 003 for storm flow until last year. So we had so much water coming in that we actually had our main discharge point 001 flowing at full capacity, and we needed to open up 003 to get more water out of the plants. That was during the atmospheric river that occurred last February. And on more recent note, the potable water stream flow augmentation system that we installed in 2022, that's also going to utilize pipeline 003 to discharge. So this is part of the 003 discharge point, and this is actually a video from last year. Let's see if it plays. Not great, but that's the partial flume at the reclamation facility. And this is how we just opened up a sluice gate there, slide gate, and our pond was completely full, overflowing, and utilized that partial flume for measuring the flow rate out, and then the pipe at the end of that channel is the entrance to the 003. And then on this side, this is the new ammonia removal structure. The discharge area, if you can follow my cursor, is right on this box on that side. So that also connects to the 003 pipeline. And this is the alignment. So I know it's pretty hard to see. On this end, at the near the Tapia effluent pond, right on that end, that's where that partial flume is. And the alignment of the 003 pipeline is about half a mile long and discharges down here into Malibu Creek. So over the years, we've had lots of progress on the project. We've been going through environmental permitting. LA County, we've made some milestone achievements. We've completed biological assessment reports, arborist reports. We've circulated the California Environmental Quality Act initial study and mitigated negative declaration. We've submitted applications for a coastal development permit. And so it's been an ongoing process for several years, getting through environmental permitting. Here's an example of the arborist report. These are the trees that we have to mitigate for. So those are all in the alignment of the pipeline. And assisting us with the planning and environmental permitting, we've had Rincon Consulting provide those reports and the mitigated monitoring reporting program. We have MKN on board to do design and project planning, as well as once the access structures get installed. So MKN is designing access structures along the bends of the pipeline for further inspection so that we can get in there and see what the condition of the pipeline is. And we'll do CCTV at that point. We've been reaching out and had open communication with several agencies and wanting to get ahead of for any further delays and wanting to secure a contract with Tree People Land and Trust or the tree mitigation. We went ahead and solicited for the tree mitigation that would be required eventually. So Tree People Land and Trust has provided a quote for in lieu mitigation. We also want to get ahead of any delays that may be caused next year because we would like some rare plant surveys completed this year so that we can maybe get our bid documents out in the fall of this year and not have to wait until an entire season in 2026 to do those rare plant surveys. So we have several recommendations with this report. The first one is adopt the initial study, mitigated negative declaration, and mitigated monitoring and reporting program for the Tapia Water Reclamation Facility 003 outfall pipeline and authorize the administering agent, general manager, to execute a notice of determination to be filed with the Los Angeles County Clerk. And along with that recommendation, Rincon Consultants and MKN have also submitted some scope changes for further project management and some planning and design alterations. So the second recommendation is to authorize scope change number 4 and 5 with Rincon Consultants Incorporated in the combined amount of $21,039 for additional project management work and to conduct those rare plant surveys. Recommendation number 3, authorize amendment number 1 in the amount of $32,172 for additional engineering, design, and support services and that's from MKN. And the fourth recommendation is to authorize a contractual services agreement with Tree People Land Trust in the amount of $250,913 for tree mitigation services. So if that's it for my presentation, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Well, let's get a motion and a second.
I'll move it. Second.
Fantastic. Any questions or comments for Veronica, excuse me. Yes, Len.
Thank you for a great presentation. I didn't see any comments about bird nesting and timing of construction, nor did I What happens if they find rare plants? A and B.
Um, That's a good question. Bird nesting is included in the mitigated monitoring reporting program. So that is, that's something that we'll address when we actually take a contract for mitigated monitoring. So from environmental monitoring, that would be the environmentalists following the MMRP. And we also have bat surveys in there. Bat surveys.
Bat surveys, got
Bat
it.
surveys, bird surveys, the rare plant surveys are in that MMRP as well, but we pulled that specific survey out because to try to get ahead of the seasons for that. If nesting birds are found, we would mitigate for that on a as case by case basis. Usually, we prevent the bird from building the nest, but if it has to be moved, it would be done by a qualified
Biologist.
bird biologist. Yes. Yeah.
Thanks.
But we can prevent, you know, if we depending on when we start the
Right, there was no, I noticed
construction,
there was
we
no
can
time,
prevent them
no
from
mention of
building a nest.
time of start of construction. I noticed that, when are you gonna build this thing? When are you gonna put this pipe in? And this, so is the plan to attack it in several locations or start in one place and go to the end?
The plan is to get in there and build these access structures at once. So it's not a
multiple-
very long pipeline.
Right.
However, the environmental sensitivity of the location does require a lot of this environmental permitting. We will mobilize all at once in that, let me pull up, in the state parkland.
Mhm.
So that's where most of these access structures are going to be. They're across the road from Tapia,
Yep.
across Malibu Canyon Road. And that alignment we have a staging area set up in our CEQA documents. And it would be up to the contractor on how they approach each manhole site.
Manhole site. Okay, thank you.
Other questions or comments? I have one. Silly question probably, but we're going to still need this after we build the AWPF.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
We're going
Dave,
to still be putting water in the creek when required after we build.
Yes, particularly for stream flow augmentation, that has not been pulled from our NPDES permit. So breakpoint chlorination is the preferred method, was the preferred method of that approaching that. So treatment of potable water and discharge. So we're utilizing 003 because it takes water down further into Malibu Creek, closer to the gauging station, when that's the gauging station that we read to maintain 2.5 CFS. So otherwise we could have just discharged from 001, but we probably would have used more water to get it down the further distance.
That makes sense.
So one of the reasons we're doing this is because severe scaling and missing coating in the existing pipeline?
Yeah, it's deteriorated.
And didn't that have to go into Surfrider Beach when it came out of the pipe? Like the coating, where'd the coating go?
Well, it doesn't reach all the way to the ocean.
It goes in the streams?
It stops at a unused wetland. So the wetland no longer is maintained. It was started up in 1979. It was a constructed wetland, but we haven't really used it. It stops at Malibu Creek.
Because you'd think the environmental community would want us to do this.
Mm-hmm.
So it'd be a more efficient way of taking the water and putting it out in the ocean, right? I mean, but then they fight us on doing this and make us spend all this money.
The process.
Yeah, the same thought, I think, crossed my mind, is the project is going to support native fish, but yet a lot of the work to make this project ready for construction has been around environmental concerns.
We initially approached this project as a rehabilitation notice of exemption through CEQA, and it was the coastal planning Commission that declined that waiver of a coastal development permit. So we had to go through the entire CEQA process application for a coastal development permit.
They have to keep their reputation up.
I'd say this is probably one of the most challenging projects from an environmental standpoint that I've seen the JPA work on.
There's a lot of moving parts to this one.
Yeah, but we have to be sensitive to it. I mean, the list is fairly large, starting with bumblebees, bats, to the creek, to the riparian habitat. So we're environmentally sensitive. You know, obviously this is a big deal, right down to the bumblebee that's almost an endangered species.
Yeah, I believe the bumblebee is also called out in our initial study.
Fantastic. Any other questions or comments? Veronica, great presentation. I appreciate that. Let's call the vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Are there any abstentions? Seeing none, passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to number 7, board comments. Do we have any board comments from the members of the board of directors? We're going to get home for dinner early tonight. Moving on, number 8, administering agent and general manager report. Dave, are you providing the report? Yes.
I'll keep
fantastic.
the report very brief. Just a couple calendar items that I wanted to mention. Next week on March 12th, our legal counsel will be helping with ethics training and sexual harassment prevention training. That will be in this room here at 10 a.m. And so if those are trainings that you need, look forward to seeing you here next week for that. Also, I wanted to note, it's not a JPA project, but on Friday, March 21st, we're going to be having the rescheduled placement of our ocean well pod in Las Virgenes Reservoir, and wanted to invite the Triunfo side of the board to join us for that event. If you have an interest, we'd love to have you. I will send an invite to each of you, but that was the event that was planned in January and had to be postponed because of the Palisades fire. And then last, the next JPA meeting, it will be at Triunfo, and that will be on April 7th. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Dave. Any comments or questions for Dave? Fantastic. I have just one comment. I believe the representative from Wyoming showed some interest, Mike, in coming down for the big splash. Anyway, she might have just been saying that, but it was nice to hear. Moving on, number 9, future agenda items. Is there anyone on the board? Ask the board whether they wish to request any future agenda items. Seeing none, information items. Ask the board whether they have any questions or comments regarding the information item. Not really sure what that's about. Seeing none, moving on. Moving on. So 10A, the big event, the Climate Action and Adaptation Plan, CAAP, annual update.
So that item is an information item. We previously presented this plan to the board, and one of the things we had committed to do is an annual report. That's included in the agenda package. We weren't planning to present on it, but can answer questions if there are any.
Fine. Public comments. Josie, any comment cards?
None at this time.
Fantastic. And with that, we shall adjourn. 6:27.
Nice job.